Imagine a perfect small town where everyone knows everyone and nothing bad ever happens. Now imagine a single autumn night in 1977 when a 16-year-old girl walked out her front door and vanished into thin air, leaving behind no clues, no answers, and a silence that would last for 20 long years. This is the story of a mystery that refused to stay buried, a truth more shocking than anyone could have ever dreamed, and a question that was finally answered, but not in any way you would expect. If you want to uncover the truth behind this decades-old mystery, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We dive deep into the world's most compelling unsolved cases and bring you the stories that need to be told. And let us know where you're watching from. Comment your city name below. The small town of Cedar Falls had a way of holding onto its secrets, wrapped in the gentle fog that drifted off the river and tucked into the dense, ancient woods that surrounded it. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and nothing truly bad ever happened. Until the day it did. It was Friday, September 16th, 1977. The air was turning crisp, carrying the smell of burning leaves and the distant sound of a high school football game. For 16-year-old Sarah Jennings, it was supposed to be a normal night. She told her mother, Eleanor, she was walking to her best friend Amy's house to study for a history test. It was a 10-minute walk, a route she had taken 100 times before, down Elm Street, across the old stone bridge, and left on Maple Lane. She never arrived. The first call came at 8:05 p.m. Amy's mother, wondering where Sarah was. Eleanor Jennings, a widow who worked as a nurse, felt a first, faint prickle of anxiety, but brushed it away. Sarah was responsible, but she was also a teenager. Maybe she got distracted, met another friend. By 9:30 p.m., when the football game would have been letting out and Sarah still wasn't home, the prickle became a cold dread. Eleanor got in her car, a faded blue station wagon, and drove the route herself. Her headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating empty sidewalks and quiet houses. She saw nothing, no sign of her daughter. By 11 p.m., she was at the Cedar Falls Sheriff's Office, her voice trembling as she spoke to Sheriff Roy Dawes. Sheriff Dawes was a man built for calming noises, not for crises. He took the report with a patient, practiced air. Now, Elle, don't you go borrowing trouble. I'm sure she's just off with some friends, lost track of time. You know how kids are. But his reassurance felt hollow even to him. Cedar Falls was small. There were only so many places a teenager could be on a Friday night. He dispatched his 2 deputies to check the town's lone diner, the drugstore soda fountain, and the overlook where kids sometimes went to park. They found nothing. By morning, the entire town knew. Sarah Jennings was missing. The investigation that followed was a torrent of well-meaning but ultimately futile effort. Search parties fanned out through the woods along her route. They found a single, white sneaker caught on a branch near the riverbank below the stone bridge. It was identified as Sarah's. The river was dragged, but it was deep and fast-moving from recent rains, and the search yielded nothing. Witnesses were scarce. Old Mr. Henderson, who lived near the bridge, thought he might have heard a sharp sound, like a car backfiring, around 7:45 that evening, but he couldn't be sure. Another neighbor reported seeing a dark-colored sedan, maybe a Chevrolet, driving slowly down Elm Street around that time, but they couldn't recall a license plate or any specific details. It was a ghost. The case grew cold with the approaching winter. The posters around town, with Sarah's smiling, freckled face and hopeful eyes, faded in the sun and were eventually torn down by the wind and rain. Sheriff Dawes retired, the guilt of the unsolved case a weight he carried with him to his grave. Eleanor Jennings never moved, never changed her phone number, always holding on to the desperate, fragile hope that the phone would ring one day and it would be her daughter. But as the years turned into decades, that hope became a quiet, constant ache, a part of the town's fabric, a story parents would sometimes tell their children about being careful after dark. Sarah Jennings became a memory, a sad footnote in the history of Cedar Falls, a girl who vanished into the thin autumn air of 1977, leaving behind a single sneaker and a lifetime of questions. 20 years passed. The world moved on. Cedar Falls got a new stoplight, a new shopping mall on the outskirts of town. The kids who had known Sarah grew up, had families of their own. The mystery of her disappearance was now a piece of local legend, discussed in hushed tones sometimes at the town diner or during slow days at the barber shop. The official case file, thick with dead ends and speculative reports, gathered dust in a storage room in the new county sheriff's headquarters. It was a closed chapter, a tragedy, but an old one. Then, on the morning of May 12, 1997, a construction crew was breaking ground for a new housing development on the old Millerton property, a vast, wooded tract of land on the opposite side of the river from where Sarah had disappeared. It was land that had been tied up in legal battles for years, untouched and overgrown. The crew foreman, a man named Bill Hendricks, was operating a large excavator, its metal teeth biting into the soft earth to dig the foundation for a new home. Around 10:30 a.m., the machine hit something solid and unyielding. Annoyed, thinking it was a large rock or a buried piece of old farming equipment, Bill climbed down from his cab to investigate. He used a shovel to clear away the damp soil, expecting to see granite or rusted iron. Instead, he saw the unmistakable curve of faded, dirty plastic. He cleared more dirt, his curiosity turning into a slow, dawning horror. It wasn't a rock. It was a car. An old, compact car, buried completely and deliberately. He called the sheriff's office. The new sheriff, Ben Carter, arrived within 20 minutes. He was a younger man, serious and methodical, who had grown up hearing the stories about Sarah Jennings. As more of the vehicle was uncovered, a cold knot tightened in his stomach. It was a Chevrolet Vega, a model popular in the mid-70s. Its color was hard to discern under the caked-on mud, but patches of a dark, navy blue were visible. The windows were rolled up, and the car was filled with dirt that had seeped in through rusted seams over the decades. It was a time capsule, interred in a shallow grave. The forensic team was called in from the state capitol. It was a delicate, grim operation. They couldn't simply rip the car out with the excavator. They had to carefully dig around it, stabilize it, and then painstakingly remove the soil from inside. The air around the site grew still and heavy. News vans gathered at the police tape, their reporters speaking in low, excited tones. The entire town held its breath. Sheriff Carter stood by, his arms crossed, watching as a technician slowly, carefully brushed dirt away from the passenger side window. He peered inside with a flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom of the compacted earth. The light glinted off something, a flash of white, a shape. He recoiled slightly, his face pale. He looked at Sheriff Carter and gave a slow, grim nod. Inside the car, slumped in the passenger seat, was a skeleton. It was mostly skeletal remains, still partially clad in the tattered remnants of what appeared to be jeans and a decayed sweatshirt. Tangled around the vertebrae of the neck was a thin, delicate silver chain with a small, tarnished pendant, a tiny ballet slipper. Eleanor Jennings had described that pendant to investigators for 20 years. It was the one she had given Sarah for her 14th birthday. They had found her. They had found Sarah Jennings. The car was carefully extracted and transported to the state medical examiner's office. The identification, through dental records and the pendant, was a formality. It was her. The discovery answered one heartbreaking question, but unleashed a torrent of others, more terrifying and complex than anyone could have imagined. How did her car end up buried on the opposite side of the river from where she vanished? Who put it there? And most chilling of all, the initial examination by the pathologist revealed something that made the entire case, thought to be a tragic accident or a simple abduction, spiral into something far more sinister. The state of the remains suggested something that defied all logical explanation, a detail so bizarre it would shake the town of Cedar Falls to its very core and rewrite a 20-year-old mystery into something no one could have ever predicted. The story was not over. It had only just begun. The identification of the body should have been the end of it, a tragic conclusion to a 20-year nightmare. For Eleanor Jennings, the confirmation that the bones in the blue Chevrolet Vega were indeed those of her daughter brought a devastating, yet oddly necessary, closure. There was a funeral, a small, quiet affair attended by those who still remembered the vibrant girl from 1977. The local newspaper ran a headline, "Mystery Solved, Sarah Jennings Laid to Rest." But inside the sheriff's department, the discovery had ignited a firestorm of new questions, and the case, officially, was wider open than ever before. Sheriff Ben Carter stood in the cold, sterile room of the state medical examiner's office, staring at the photographs pinned to a large board. The unearthed Vega, looking like a grotesque fossil. The skeletal remains, carefully arranged on a stainless steel table. The personal effects, meticulously cataloged. Dr. Irene Fletcher, the chief medical examiner, was a woman of few words and unwavering precision. She pointed a laser pointer at a close-up x-ray of the skull. Cause of death is a single gunshot wound to the back of the head, .22 caliber, she stated, her voice echoing flatly in the tiled room. The bullet fragmented on impact, but we recovered enough. Execution style. This was no accident, Sheriff. This was a homicide. Carter absorbed the information. A murder. They had always suspected it, but hearing it confirmed was different. It made the past feel violently present. Time of death, he asked. That's the first problem, Fletcher replied, clicking to another image, this one of the victim's wrist. The watch she was wearing. A digital Lead-X model, popular with teenagers in the 70s. It was crushed during the burial, but the LCD display was preserved in a pocket of dirt. It's frozen, of course. It reads 8:17 p.m., we assume, given the evening she vanished. Carter nodded. That fit the timeline. Sarah left her house around 7:30. The supposed car backfire was heard around 7:45. So she was killed shortly after 8. That's what the watch suggests, Fletcher said. But it's the second problem that's the real puzzle. She changed the image again, this time to a photograph of the victim's jeans, faded and ripped, but still intact enough to see the label. These are Wrangler jeans. The specific design and the tag style place their manufacture date in late 1978. She let the silence hang in the air for a moment. A full year after Sarah Jennings disappeared, Carter felt the ground shift under his feet. That's impossible. There must be a mistake. Maybe she bought them secondhand. Perhaps, Fletcher conceded, though her tone suggested she doubted it. But there's more. She pointed to another photo, this one of a small, corroded metal box found under the passenger seat. We managed to open this. Inside was a wallet. She clicked a remote, and a high-definition image of a brown leather wallet filled the screen. It was worn, but clearly visible inside a plastic sleeve was a driver's license. The name on the license was not Sarah Jennings. It was Lisa Marie Thompson. The date of birth made her 17 years old. The issue date on the license was March 1979. Sheriff Carter's mind raced, trying to fit jagged pieces together that refused to connect. Who is Lisa Thompson? Was she reported missing? We're running it through the database now, Carter said, his voice tight. But that's not all. The car. He left the morgue and drove back to the impound garage where the Vega was being held. His lead investigator, Deputy Maria Garcia, was waiting for him, her face grim. The VIN number, she said, handing him a file without preamble. It doesn't match. What do you mean it doesn't match? Doesn't match what? The vehicle registration for the Jennings family, Garcia explained. The car Sarah Jennings was believed to be driving that night was her mother's 1975 Ford Pinto. This, she said, tapping the file, is a 1974 Chevrolet Vega. VIN number confirms it. It was reported stolen from a used car lot in Mason City, over 60 miles away, on September 15, 1977, the day before Sarah vanished. None of it made sense. The body was Sarah's, identified by her dental records and her necklace. But she was found in a stolen car, wearing clothes made a year after she died, alongside the identification of another girl. It was a paradox, a Russian nesting doll of mysteries. The press, sensing a story far bigger than a simple cold case resolution, descended on Cedar Falls. The narrative shifted from a solved tragedy to an ongoing, bizarre enigma. Then, the call came in from the records department. Lisa Marie Thompson. She had been reported missing from a town called Brookside, nearly 200 miles away, in August of 1979. She had last been seen getting into a dark blue sedan after a shift at a local diner. The case had gone cold, a forgotten file among thousands of others. The discovery of her wallet in Sarah Jennings's grave meant two missing girls were now tragically connected, separated by 2 years, but united by a single, buried car. The investigation tore open old wounds and created new ones. They re-interviewed everyone. Amy, Sarah's best friend, now a married mother of 2, broke down in tears, her memory of that night fogged by time and trauma. Eleanor Jennings was reeling, the stable ground of her grief suddenly pulled out from under her. 2 girls, she had whispered to Sheriff Carter, her face ashen. Why? What kind of monster does that? The town was buzzing with terrified speculation. The story of a lone predator, a serial killer who had operated unseen in their midst, began to take hold. But the logistics were maddening. How did he operate? Why bury 2 victims from different times together? And most importantly, where was Lisa Thompson's body? Only one set of remains was found in that car. The break came from an unlikely source. An old evidence box from the original 1977 investigation, misfiled under J for Jennings, missing person, instead of C for case evidence. Deputy Garcia, working late, found it. Inside, among the reports and interview transcripts, was a single, overlooked item, a Polaroid photograph. It was slightly blurred, taken in a wooded area. It showed 2 teenage girls sitting on the hood of a car, smiling. One was unmistakably Sarah Jennings, her hair long and straight, wearing the very same sweatshirt remnants found on the skeleton. The other girl was a blonde, her arm slung around Sarah's shoulder. They looked like friends. Written on the white border at the bottom of the photo, in faded blue ink, was a date, September 10th, 1977, and a name. The name of the other girl was Lisa. The Polaroid photograph was a seismic shock to the investigation, a piece of evidence so profound it rewrote everything they thought they knew. It was no longer a simple case of a predator snatching a girl in 1977 and another in 1979. Sarah Jennings and Lisa Thompson knew each other. They were friends, or at the very least, acquaintances, smiling together on the hood of a car just 6 days before Sarah vanished. The investigation, which had been spinning in frantic circles, now had a fixed point, a connection that screamed to be unraveled. Sheriff Carter had the photo enhanced by the State Crime Lab. The background was analyzed, the car identified, a 1968 Ford Mustang, dark green. The trees in the background were a specific type of pine common to the state park just outside Cedar Falls. The most chilling detail, however, was the person who had taken the picture. In the side view mirror of the Mustang, barely visible, was the blurred reflection of the photographer, a man, or perhaps a teenage boy, holding the camera. He was tall, wearing a faded denim jacket. His features were indistinct, a ghost in the glass. The existence of the photo meant their previous suspect profile was wrong. This wasn't a random act by a drifting serial killer. This was someone connected to them, someone they trusted enough to go into the woods with, someone who had access to a cool car. The investigation pivoted hard, focusing on the social circles of both girls, a difficult task across a 2-year and 200-mile gap. A team was dispatched to Brookside to investigate Lisa Thompson's life. They learned she was a quiet girl, a waitress saving money for community college. Her friends described her as a dreamer, someone who talked about getting out of their small town. They also revealed a crucial, previously overlooked detail. Lisa had a boyfriend the summer she disappeared. An older guy, they said, someone from out of town she met at a county fair. She was secretive about him, but she seemed excited, infatuated. She called him her ticket out of here. No one had ever gotten a name, and the lead had gone nowhere in 1979. Now, it glowed with sinister significance. Back in Cedar Falls, Deputy Garcia was re-interviewing Sarah's friend, Amy, showing her the enhanced Polaroid. Amy's face, already pale from the stress of the renewed investigation, lost all color. She stared at the reflection in the mirror, her hand trembling as she brought it to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I know that jacket." She took a deep, shaky breath, the memories flooding back. There was a guy. His name was Michael. Michael something. Reed, I think. He was older, maybe 19 or 20. He wasn't from around here. He showed up that summer, hanging around, working odd jobs. He had a car, a green Mustang. Sarah thought he was so cool. She had a huge crush on him. Amy's voice dropped to a horrified whisper. She told me she was going to meet him that night, the night she disappeared. She lied to her mom about studying with me. She was going to see Michael. Michael Reed. The name was a key turning in a long locked door. They ran it through every database. Nothing in Cedar Falls. Nothing in Brookside. It was as if he didn't exist. But then, a call from the DMV yielded a fragment. A Michael Reed, with a date of birth that would have made him 1977, had gotten a driver's license in a neighboring state in 1975. The address listed was a P.O. box. The trail was ice cold. The break came from the car itself. The soil forensics team, analyzing the dirt that had filled the Vega, found something the original search had missed. Mixed in with the local clay and sediment were tiny, specific fragments of organic material. Sawdust, and a particular type of wood shaving not native to the Cedar Falls area. It was the kind of waste produced by a large-scale lumber mill or a furniture factory. Cross-referencing this with the stolen car report from Mason City, they found a connection that had been missed for 20 years. The used car lot from which the Vega was stolen was located directly across the street from the now-defunct Northern Plains Furniture Manufacturing Plant. The plant had closed down in 1982. Its employee records were stored in a dusty warehouse. It took a team of deputies 3 days to go through the mildewed time cards and payroll ledgers. And then they found it. On a payroll sheet for the summer of 1977, listed as a temporary summer loader, was the name Michael Reed. He had worked there for 6 weeks. He had stolen a car from across the street, and he had connections to 2 missing girls. They tracked down the old foreman of the plant, a retired man named Frank living in Arizona. When Sheriff Carter reached him on the phone, the man's memory was hazy. Summer help came and went, he said. I don't remember names. But when Carter mentioned the green Mustang, Frank's tone changed. Oh yeah, that kid. Yeah, I remember him. Quiet. Kept to himself. Always polishing that car. He got into a fight near the end of the summer. Another guy accused him of stealing his wallet. It got ugly. We let him go. Carter asked if he remembered the other man's name. Frank thought for a long moment. Wallace. Yeah, Pete Wallace. Mean drunk. Worked in the sanding department. Pete Wallace. The name was run through the system. He had a record: assault, drunk, and disorderly. His last known address was a rundown apartment in Mason City. Sheriff Carter and Deputy Garcia drove there immediately. The apartment manager let them in. The place was a shrine to squalor, smelling of stale beer and defeat. Pete Wallace, a gaunt, weathered man in his 60s, was sitting in a stained armchair, watching a game show. He looked at the badges without surprise, only a deep, tired resentment. He denied knowing any Michael Reed at first, his words slurred. But when Garcia showed him the enhanced Polaroid, his eyes narrowed, and a flicker of recognition, mixed with fear, passed over his face. Yeah, I remember that punk, he spat. Thief. Thought he was better than everyone with his fancy car. Carter pressed him, asking what happened the day of the fight. Wallace became evasive, nervous. It was nothing. He was a liar. I got my wallet back, that's all. Where did you get it back from? Garcia asked, her voice calm but firm. Wallace looked down at his hands, refusing to meet their eyes. He had it. In his car. I saw it. I went out to the parking lot on my break and saw it sitting right there on his passenger seat. My wallet. I confronted him. We fought. They fired us both. You went into his car? Carter asked. It was unlocked. Wallace insisted, defensively. I was just getting what was mine. Did you see anything else in the car? Garcia pressed. Anything unusual? Wallace was silent for a long time, the only sound the blare of the television. He took a swig from a bottle of whiskey beside his chair. His hand was shaking. There was a bag, he muttered, almost to himself. A gym bag, in the back footwell. It was open. I saw a gun inside, a little one, and some rope, and a shovel, a small folding shovel like soldiers use. He looked up at them, his eyes wide with a 20-year-old fear. I got my wallet and I got out of there. I didn't want no trouble. A guy with a bag like that. You don't ask questions. You just walk away. The pieces were falling into a horrifying pattern. Michael Reed wasn't just a charming older boy. He was a planner. He was prepared. He had a kit, a kidnapping kit, and Pete Wallace had seen it, had been terrified in his silence for 2 decades. The search for Michael Reed was no longer a cold case review. It was an active manhunt. They had a name, a possible age, a vehicle, and a motive that pointed to a calculated serial predator. But where did he go after that summer? And was he still out there? The discovery of the car suggested he had stayed local, at least long enough to bury it. But the grave had held its secret for 20 years. The man they were hunting was careful, methodical, and had vanished as completely as his victims. Until now, the revelation of Michael Reed's kidnapping kit, witnessed by a terrified Pete Wallace, transformed the investigation from a historical mystery into an urgent, present-day manhunt. The quiet streets of Cedar Falls no longer felt safe. The past had bled into the present, and the shadow of a calculated predator fell over the town once more. Sheriff Carter ordered patrols to be doubled, a directive that felt useless against a ghost who had already proven he could operate unseen for 2 decades. The priority was to find Michael Reed, but with a name that common and records that old, it was like searching for a specific grain of sand on a vast beach. The focus returned to the one piece of evidence they had that Reed hadn't been able to bury, the Polaroid. The state crime lab worked on enhancing the reflection in the side view mirror, pushing their technology to the limit. Meanwhile, Garcia had a different idea. She took the photo to the one place where memories from 1977 were still sharp, the Cedar Falls Senior Center. She sat with a group of women who had been teenagers themselves in the late 70s, their eyesight fading, but their recall of youthful gossip still razor-sharp. One woman, holding the photo with trembling hands, squinted at the reflection. "That jacket," she said. "Denim, with that embroidered eagle on the shoulder. Billy Cooper had a jacket like that. His mom stitched it for him. He was so proud of that thing." Billy Cooper. The name hit Garcia like a physical blow. William Billy Cooper was a local boy. He had been a year ahead of Sarah in school. He still lived in Cedar Falls, working as a manager at the town's hardware store. He was a respected member of the community, a family man, a guy who coached Little League. He was the last person anyone would suspect. But the jacket was a thread, and they had to pull it. They brought Billy Cooper in for questioning under the pretext of routine follow-up. He was cooperative, friendly even, his expression one of polite confusion. He confirmed he knew Sarah, said she was a nice girl, expressed how terrible her disappearance had been for the town. He remembered the jacket, too. "Sure, I had one like that. Lots of us did." It was the style. He was calm, his story consistent. He had been at the football game the night Sarah vanished, he said. Dozens of people could vouch for him. It was a solid, unshakable alibi. The interview yielded nothing. They had to let him go. But Garcia couldn't let it go. The alibi was too perfect. She went back through the original 1977 witness statements. One from a friend of Billy's placed him at the game, but the timing was vague. Another mentioned seeing him buy a hot dog sometime during the second quarter. It was alibi by committee, not by fact. She drove to the high school and dug through archive boxes of old football programs. The game on September 16th, 1977, was against their biggest rivals. It was a packed, chaotic night. Anyone could have slipped away unnoticed. The break came from the enhanced image. The crime lab had managed to pull a startlingly clear detail from the blurred reflection. In the man's hand, the one steadying the camera, was a distinct, dark birthmark shaped like a crescent moon on the web of skin between his thumb and forefinger. It was unique. It was identifiable. Sheriff Carter and Deputy Garcia went to the hardware store. They found Billy Cooper restocking nails, his sleeves rolled up in the warm store. As he turned to greet them, his smile faltered. His eyes flicked from their serious faces down to his own hands, and he instinctively clenched them into fists. But it was too late. They had seen it. Clear as day, on his right hand, was the crescent moon birthmark. In the interrogation room, Billy Cooper's friendly demeanor evaporated, replaced by a cold, weary resignation. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He just stared at the table for a long time. "You don't understand," he finally said, his voice flat. "You think you found a monster. You haven't. The story he told was not the one they expected. Michael Reed, he explained, was his cousin from out of state. A charismatic, troubled young man who had been sent to live with Billy's family that summer to straighten out. Billy, a shy kid, had been dazzled by him. Michael had the car, the confidence, the stories. He also had a violent, controlling temper. He set his sights on Sarah Jennings, and he used Billy to get to her. The Polaroid was Michael's idea, a way to make Sarah feel comfortable, to show her he had a friend, a local boy she knew. The night she vanished, Billy said, his voice hollow, he told me to meet him at the bridge after the game started. He said he needed my help with a surprise for Sarah. When I got there, it was too late. He described a scene of nightmarish chaos. Michael and Sarah were arguing by the stolen blue Vega. Michael was enraged, accusing her of flirting with someone else. He pulled the small .22 pistol. There was a struggle. The gun went off. Sarah fell. He panicked, Billy whispered. He said we had to make it look like she'd run away. He made me help him, put her in the passenger seat. He drove. I followed in his Mustang. We went to the old Millerton property. It was abandoned. He'd already dug a hole days before. He said it was for a landscaping project. He planned it. He'd planned the whole thing. He described how they pushed the Vega into the grave, how Michael made him shovel dirt until the car was covered. Michael threatened to kill Billy's entire family if he ever spoke a word. 2 years later, the pattern repeated. Michael had gotten a job near Brookside. He met Lisa Thompson. He charmed her, using the same stories. But when Lisa found the ballet slipper pendant in his glove box and recognized it from the news reports about Sarah, she became suspicious. She confronted him. He killed her too. He forced Billy to drive up and help him bury her. With Sarah, he said it was neatening things up, Billy said, a sob finally breaking through. He put her wallet in the car to confuse everything if it was ever found. He was always thinking, always planning. He told them Michael Reed had left the state shortly after, assuming a new identity. Billy never saw him again. He lived every day in fear, a prisoner of his own guilt and terror, pretending to be a normal man while knowing the horrible truth was buried just a few miles away. Based on Billy's testimony, an arrest warrant was issued for Michael Reed. His photo, compiled from old yearbooks and the enhanced Polaroid, was circulated nationwide. But Michael Reed, the charismatic ghost, had vanished into the American landscape. Despite a massive search, he was never found. Some believe he died under his new alias. Others are certain he is still out there, an old man now, his past crimes hidden behind a life built on lies. Billy Cooper was convicted as an accessory to murder and kidnapping. The community was shattered, forced to reconcile the friendly hardware store manager they knew with the terrified teenager who helped bury 2 girls. For Eleanor Jennings, the truth was a bitter pill. The mystery was solved, but it offered no peace. The image of her daughter's final moments, betrayed by a boy she knew and murdered by a stranger, was a new kind of torture. She visited the grave one last time before moving away from Cedar Falls forever. The town tried to heal, but some wounds are too deep. The story of Sarah Jennings and Lisa Thompson is now a cautionary tale, a reminder that the most terrifying monsters are not the ones who hide in the shadows, but the ones we welcome into the light, who smile at us from the reflections of our own lives, their secrets buried just beneath the surface, waiting for the earth to finally give them up.